So I find myself with a bit of deja vu here. It's very early in the morning. It's almost 4 a.m. And I've just gone and seen the latest Star Wars film. And for a very kind of tired, fogged mind, I'm trying to analyze and sift through everything that I've just seen and formulate an opinion. So a few things I just want to get off my chest at the beginning, just kind of pointers. This is going to be a spoiler review. So if you haven't seen the film and you don't want to be spoiled, go watch the film, come back, check out this review, and see if you agree with my opinion or not. The second point is very much on that opinions. There are going to be people who really like this film, there's going to be people who really don't like it, or there's going to be people who are indifferent. And I want you to know that whatever your opinion is, I respect it. And, I appreciate that people are not going to share my opinion, but you are more than entitled to that. And I would ask everyone in the comments to please act respectfully. Please respect that people will have different opinions. At the end of the day, we're all Star Wars fans. Let's take this opportunity to talk about the last Star Wars film as fans, as friends who have seen a film, and we may all have different opinions, but that's the fun of it. If we all agreed on the same thing, it'd be boring. So please just be respectful and kind in the comments, and don't be one of those people who goes and attacks people associated with the film directly, because that's just a real douche move. These are people just doing their jobs to the best of their ability. They don't control story elements, just be kind, be respectful. Just to give you a bit of background on me as a Star Wars fan and where I was coming into this film, I very much enjoyed The Force Awakens. I know there was definite problems with it in terms of being a bit unoriginal, and I would definitely say this film shares some of those traits, but I enjoyed it. The Last Jedi, I didn't enjoy, for reasons that were various and well detailed in my Last Jedi review. Time has not really softened my opinion on The Last Jedi, and I am still, very much a critic of that film itself. So as a result of that, coming into this film, I managed to very much temper my expectations, and I didn't get caught up in the hype as much as I had previously. And I think it really served me well because, I'm not sitting here in as raw an emotional state as I was during The Last Jedi. I've definitely got some very strong opinions on this, which you are about to find out about, but I'm not in a kind of very raw emotional state because I had expectations up here. They're kind of more just like, hey, if it's a good film, it's a good film. If it's not, it's not. It's kind of a done deal. So I would recommend everyone else go into this with the same expectations, or anything in life, to be honest. Just temper your expectations, and, the worst comes to the worst, you're not going to be as disappointed. Simple. Also, I do want to give credit to, J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio, who I felt handled Carrie Fisher's death and Leia's character very, very well. And I want to say that I appreciate they had a very difficult job in not just picking up the threads of The Last Jedi, which did leave a lot of loose ends, but also in dealing with the fact that, Carrie Fisher, who was supposed to be an integral part of this film, passed away. And they had to use what they could from, deleted scenes and whatnot. And I think they did her character very well by, obviously the limited resources that they had. So I thought, really a lot of credit is due to them there for that. And any criticism that I do have coming up, it's not personal. Really isn't. Like I say, I like The Force Awakens. So let's get into the film here. Firstly, I want to talk about pacing. Pacing was breakneck. Certainly for the first half an hour to an hour of the film. You are taken to so many different locations. You're given so much information that, for me, I didn't struggle with it too much because I'm a Star Wars fan. I gobble up that kind of stuff for breakfast. I want all the information and I want it now. I want to see as much as I can in this 2.5 hours as possible. But I think for the casual fan, it is going to be a struggle because they may not have seen a Star Wars film for a long time, or they may not be caught up with everything, or they may have forgotten. And so all of a sudden you're talking about the Emperor coming back and Kylo being annoyed and then going to Exegol. Kylo finding the Wayfinder, and then you're with Rey training on the planet. It's kind of like, it is a lot to take in a short space of time, and I think unless you are specifically inclined towards that kind of stuff, you're going to struggle. So I think a lot of casual fans will have the complaint of the pacing was way too fast and there was too much too soon, and I can understand that. The pacing slows down a little bit as time goes on, but it still is a movie that moves very fast. There's a hell of a lot of locations and a hell of a lot of different story elements in this. I can only imagine how it looked on paper. You know, it must have been a bit of a mess at the beginning. So, yeah, that's the first thing I really want to raise. Another point that is positive that I want to give praise for is Anthony Daniels as C-3PO is one of the standout stars of this film. I thought he did a fantastic job. I thought the way 3PO was written was really well done. It felt like 3PO, you know, it felt like the humour was 3PO. His character got spotlight that he deserved. And so I've only got, you know, good things to say about the way his character was written and the way he performed it. The praise is going to start to lessen at this point because I'm running out of good things to say about the film, and the bad things that I'm going to start talking about are going to start becoming more apparent. There were other things that I did like, you know, the scene with Han and Kylo, I like that. I like the reflection of it being, you know, the Force Awakens scene, fully realised, they've come full circle. The fight with Kylo and Rey on the Death Star, I thought that was really well done. Some of the visuals were brilliant. And again, this whole movie, you know, the visuals, fantastic. Can't complain about that. Exegol in particular, setting up the Emperor in this really creepy setting, did give a very disturbing and unsettling feeling to anyone watching that. And certainly to me, I was like, oh, this is creepy. You know, and that's the way you should feel when the Emperor's on screen. You should feel creeped out. And they did a really good job at that. So, you know, I want to kind of preface this and say that this film isn't all bad. But there is a hell of a lot wrong. And this is where I'm going to try and not go too full all in on them. But I really need to kind of emphasize certain points that I feel they really did poorly on. Firstly was a lack of wider knowledge. There's so many things that we are left to assume or that don't get explained. So firstly, Palpatine. Palpatine's return never gets explained in full. He refers to himself as having died. Then he talks about cloning, Sith alchemy, but it never gets fully explained as to how he survived, who brought his body from the Death Star to there, and how he's still alive. You know, he mentioned something about the Sith all being in him and whatnot, and maybe we're expected to believe that's keeping him going. I don't really believe that. And I think it was just kind of like they just thought we would ignore it if they just gave us some kind of quick mention about cloning or the fact that he did die. You know, maybe we won't ask too many questions. So that was a big gaping hole that was very noticeable and very poorly done, in my opinion. The state of the galaxy at the beginning of the film, there's not an explanation given. You know, we assume the First Order has taken control, but then when we get to the meeting with the generals, they talk about how they need the Sith fleet. And I sit there thinking, well, was the First Order not strong enough to take over the galaxy? Why did they try and invade in the first place then? Why do they need the Sith fleet? It feels like, once again, the inconsistencies between films is dragging it down. You know, and you're left kind of asking, well, what? I thought this was the case, but now you're telling me this is the case. And again, for the end of the film, that's, for me, a very much a big... The biggest issue I had, well, not the biggest issue, but one of the biggest issues I had at the very end of the film was the sudden cut from the Emperor being destroyed to now, all of a sudden, all these ships falling out of the sky. Firstly, the Sith fleet, from my understanding, the goal was to destroy their navigation so that they would be stuck in the unknown regions. Then the Resistance fleet could get the hell out of there and not have to face the thousands of ships that are there. Then you kind of suddenly cut from the destruction of the Emperor to all of these ships falling out the sky, having been destroyed. I'm like, so hold on, you did destroy the Sith fleet, but I didn't think that was the intention. Then you cut to the rest of the galaxy outside, and you start to see First Order ships crashing. And I'm sitting there thinking, hang on, Only one First Order ship went to the unknown regions. It was General Pride's ship. The rest of the First Order is still there. How are their ships being brought down? And this is another big point for me, is the fact that we're just expected at the end of it to ignore a big gaping hole in the story of, okay, the Sith fleet is gone. That's dealt with. Emperor's dead. Kylo is dead. Bad guy's gone. But then you think about it and you think, hang on, the First Order's still in the galaxy. They still control all these planets. Who's going to bring them down? The only reason the Resistance fleet had a chance is because the Sith Star Destroyers didn't have shields because they were in an atmosphere or whatever. But the First Order fleet is in space and they have shields. And they presumably outnumber the Resistance fleet. So how did they get brought down? Who did that? Because if they could do that, why didn't they do that at the beginning of the film rather than wait till after the Sith fleet? Because they talk about fear. They talk about fear causing people to not respond to the message on Crate. That is something I did like, is the fact that they did tie up a couple of those loose ends from the Last Jedi, that being one of them. Another being Luke admitting he was wrong. I was very happy to hear that he could admit at least that he was wrong and that fear kept him there. So if the First Order wasn't strong enough to hold the galaxy, why were people fearing them? If they were strong enough, then how did they get defeated at the very end? Because only one First Order ship got taken down in that battle on Exegol. What about the rest of the First Order? We never learn that. We just assume that they're gone. And Rey's on Tatooine. It's kind of like you go from Exegol to like, hey, here's some celebration on Cloud City, and here's Ewoks, and oh, Rey's on Tatooine now. Ignore that big plot hole that we're talking about with the First Order. Don't look there. Don't look over there. Look at this dual sunset. The Force theme. Yellow lightsaber. Look at that. So it did feel like they were kind of like moving it forward very quickly to kind of pave over some of those big story plot holes. Biggest problem for me in this film, Kylo Ren. I love Kylo Ren. I love Kylo Ren's developments through all of the films so far. He's my favourite sequel trilogy character. And I think his story has been done so well. He was one of the few positives from the Last Jedi. And I think he is such an interesting character that, unfortunately, his journey in The Rise of Skywalker is one that really lacks. It really, really lacks. We see at the beginning he is paranoid. He wants to bring down Palpatine because he's, rightly trying to consolidate his power, and Palpatine is a threat. Very believable. And you can tell that Ben is a bit out of his depth. Kylo's a bit out of his depth as he makes his way into Exegol. And I like that because, it shows you that no matter, he's the big supreme leader, but he's still very kind of nervous and he's still carrying around this insecurity. But then as the film progresses, he goes from being this kind of supreme leader to being, he chases Rey around the galaxy and just gets beaten at every turn, Sorry, I'm just going to take a sip of water. Also, apologies about the cat coming in and out. So, yeah, he gets beaten at every single corner. Rey bests him. I know with the help of Leia, but Rey still bests him on the Death Star. He gets beaten up by the Knights of Ren. He gets booted down a cavern by Palpatine and then comes back just to die. What was that all about? Why did he die? Hold on. I need another drink of water before I rant. Even Zuko realised I was about to rant and decided to go the other way. Right. Okay, so Kylo Ren, presumed dead, comes back, or Ben Solo, presumed dead, comes back from the dead just to die. Because he saved Rey. It was a device to bring Rey back. They didn't need to kill Rey. They didn't need to kill Kylo. I say Kylo. If I say Kylo, assume I mean Ben. I'd have much rather they'd have killed Rey and kept Ben alive, because that would have made his redemption even more significant. It would have made sense that the Rise of Skywalker, he is the last Skywalker, He has risen. It's taken Rey's sacrifice and the end of the Palpatine line for the Skywalker line to rise and for Kylo Ren to be redeemed into Ben Solo once more. But instead, nope, they managed to fuck up the best character in this entire trilogy. And they had to get the kiss in, didn't they? Oh, it felt so wrong. It just felt so forced. And I know there's a lot of Reylo fans out there, which, again, it's completely cool if you're into that. I don't mind. I just always felt that Reylo was not a thing because she went from absolutely despising him in the first episode to trying to convince him in the second episode to turn towards the light. And then again at the end of the film being shown that he is an utter bastard. And, in this film she's only got... I guess she... I don't know. I just thought Kylo was very poorly handled in this whole film. Other than a few scenes, like I said with Han Solo, I just would have preferred if he was going to get redeemed, it be at the price of Rey. If you're not going to have, if you can't have both of them live, I mean, what was the point in the dyad thing? Talk about how they're both intrinsically linked, and then you just have one of them die. So it was frustrating the way they handled his story, and it was kind of like I really wanted to see Ben Solo, but this is the thing, like Ben Solo, when he dies, he joins the Force, he goes into nothingness. Why didn't Rey? She was dead. Why didn't she merge with the Force? Is it because the Force was like, you know what, we're going to hold on. We're going to hold on for a second and see if she gets healed. We don't want to take her just yet. But with Ben, it's like, oh, no, we're taking that motherfucker right now. And I know some people are going to say, well, it was linked to Leia or whatnot. And, it just, for me, I was kind of like, well, you can't do one and not do the other. It's like either, they rejoin the Force the moment they die, or they don't. It's inconsistent, and that's one of the main themes of the problems of this film. Let's talk about those Sith troopers and how, despite the fact that they were being built up so much, they were just Captain Phasma. They were the Captain Phasma of this film. Fucking useless. Absolutely less than useless, They were there in the film for about 20 seconds. Didn't seem any difference to... I know, I do apologise. I believe one of the stormtroopers managed to get hit with a blaster bolt and survive. But then they all died, so that was kind of pointless. There was absolutely no need to have them. It was just a merchandising and promotional tool to get people to buy shit and to put these fancy red-coloured troopers on the posters. Once again, really poor planning on the part of whoever decided that. They did it with Captain Phasma. Now they've done it with those guys. And I think a lot of people saw it coming. They were like, are we sure these guys are actually going to be prominent in the film? Or is it going to be one of those where actually they're just there just because it looked cool? And that's exactly what it was. The same with the TIE daggers. It's kind of like, And to an extent, the Knights of Ren. I appreciate the fact that they had the Knights of Ren going on this kind of cat and mouse chase across the galaxy, but in the end they still proved pretty pointless. They never really seemed much of a threat. They beat Kylo up until Kylo got his lightsaber and then just took them all out. And I get a feeling like they've come up against lightsaber users in the past. I thought they would have been able to handle that. The surprise, a guy with a knife versus the guy with a lightsaber. It's no contest. Despite the fact that, they have come up against Force users before. They fought Luke and Kylo in the comics. It's like, okay, let's ignore that. They're dead, they're gone, whatever. Another wasted potential. You know what? They should have had them survive. They should have had the Knights of Ren survive, and you could carry on their story in a separate film, But no, apparently not to be. So, let's talk about cheesiness. Let's talk about forced cheesiness. Giving the Wookiee a medal, giving Chewie a medal, was really kind of forced. In canon, he got a medal. I know that a lot of people who don't read canon won't know that, but he did. He got a medal on the same day as the rest of them. And they've rewritten that now, just to give him a really cheesy kind of scene of like, oh, here's a medal. They wanted you to have this. It's like, more forced kind of stuff, I would say. Well, I've already mentioned the kiss. What else was forced? Again, I'm trying to trudge back through my mind, but it's like 4:10 in the morning, and I'm struggling to remember everything that actually happens. A lot of the fan service felt a little bit forced, and I know I say that as someone who likes fan service. Even I knew it felt forced. Things again like Luke bringing the X-wing out of the ocean. It's been there for 35, 40 years, and you expect us to believe it just boots up as normal and she can fly it. I know we need to stretch our imagination, but come on, dude. In the visual dictionary actually of The Last Jedi, which I've got back there. Well, back there you can see it actually says that the X-wing had been partly dismantled. Like the door on the hut was part of the hull of the X-wing. So, she's got an X-wing there that somehow has miraculously been reconfigured and restored. Maybe it was the Force. Maybe the Force healed it like it healed Kylo's hole. I don't mean that hole. I mean the hole in his stomach, which apparently you can heal now. And it ties into Mandalorian. I understand now why they brought the Mandalorian out today, because they wanted to shoehorn that in. And I'm not criticising the Mandalorian for that at all. It's just kind of like all of a sudden out of nowhere there's this ability to force heal. And I know that there is some stuff in canon that you can do that. But to the extent where you can heal a lightsaber hole, it's like I can understand a minor wound, yes, an illness maybe. But we're talking about a mortal wound that would require a lot of energy, And I don't know if Kylo did the same thing to Rey, if he healed her even though she was dead. I'm not sure what he did. He died. I know that much. And along with it, any kind of interesting character development died as well. Again, I don't want to be too harsh on the film, because at the end of the day, I didn't come into this with great expectations. So, I'm not really I'm not as upset as I was during The Force Awakens. It's kind of just more like, oh, well, my greatest fears have been realised. Disney fucked up again. What was I expecting? And again, like the fake out with Chewie, to me, if I hadn't seen the trailers, I'd have probably been like, okay, interesting. But the fact that they had Chewie alive in later scenes in the trailer kind of spoiled it for everyone that it wasn't an actual... It was a fake out. And Rey using Force Lightning was a bit odd. It's kind of almost like they were trying to precursor her being Palpatine's daughter, which, by the way, I really did not like. Why couldn't Rey just be a nobody? Why couldn't she just be a randomer who got this Force power? When did the Emperor have time to have a son? Who did he have a son with? Who would sleep with that? There's so many questions that you have to now answer, because you've decided to do this thing where you need to keep it in the family. You need to keep it Palpatine versus Skywalker, and it's kind of like, oh, couldn't you have just left it well enough alone? Couldn't she have just been no one? Now that we kind of had it established in The Last Jedi that she was no one, couldn't we just keep that? And, and just go with it? Have Palpatine come back for another reason. It just seems like that's the only reason they want to bring Palpatine back, was so they could try and explain some of these things and try and kind of pander to the fans a little bit. And I think it backfired pretty spectacularly. But yeah, I wasn't a fan of that. Wasn't a fan of the whole thing there. I wasn't a fan of Rey calling herself a Skywalker at the end. And I know the message is supposed to be that anyone could be a Skywalker now. But, if that's the case, why has there been such a heavy influence on the Skywalker family right up until that moment? From the first film right up until that moment, it's always been about the Skywalker family, and now you're changing the parameters of that. It didn't sit well with me. Other things didn't sit well. No Anakin, which if you're going to have a film called The Rise of Skywalker and you're going to bring Palpatine back, you have to have Anakin do more than just a line of dialogue where he's not even seen. This is Anakin's entire redemption story. His entire idea of bringing balance to the Force was defeating Palpatine. Was him coming back from being Darth Vader and defeating the evil Emperor. To bring the Emperor back undoes a lot of that and disrespects that legacy. And, if you don't try and in some way incorporate him into Palpatine's next defeat, it just doesn't sit well with me as someone who believes this entire saga was about Anakin Skywalker and his family. And again, let's talk about the death of the Emperor. You know, having his lightning redirected back onto him and he disintegrates felt very kind of as if the writers were sitting there going, well, we don't know what else to do. We don't know how else to kill him. Let's just have the lightning go back onto him and he disintegrates. It really did not seem like there was much... There was a lack of imagination. That's, I think, for me, the biggest problem in this film. Lack of imagination. And I can't believe I find myself saying this after The Last Jedi, but I really wish they had gone a little bit more outside the box. You know, for me, the problem with The Last Jedi was they did it too much with existing characters who already had predefined characteristics and you know, traits. With this, it just felt like they were, you know, bringing in old story elements just to try and tie everything up. It's almost as if it's like, right, we've got to get this done, so fuck it, we'll say she's Palpatine's daughter, we'll bring a Sith fleet in, we'll have Kylo be redeemed, but we'll kill him off so we don't have to worry about that. We'll ignore the First Order now. This isn't about their story, it's, you know, a final order or something. You know, it just felt like there was a lot of... It was very rushed and they didn't have a lot of ideas for how to finish this up. And I appreciate, again, it's a difficult thing to try and tie up. And, you know, it's not a personal attack against anyone, you know, involved or anyone who, you know, wrote the show or anyone who acted in it, because I felt the acting was really good. It's just, for me, it's an overall disappointment because, once again, they had a lot of potential. And that's the thing for this trilogy series, is that potential has been wasted because they have... It's been a mix. It's been a mix of wanting to just get the films out, make money on them. I think there's been a kind of lack of responsibility to the main source material, you know, and a lack of clear vision. You know, the biggest mistake, as I mentioned earlier, not having a consistent writing team. There's probably a lot of stuff that I've missed that, you know, I would need to pick up again. I might do another video just to kind of pick up on points, because I will go see it again. I've got to go see it with my brother and another friend. So I'll go and watch it again, and I'll see if my opinion changes on it. I'll see if there's anything here that I've not mentioned that I should have done. But they were the main kind of jarring points. It was just a film that, to the casual fan, they probably would feel it moves too fast. To a Star Wars fan, it was something that was very convoluted and felt like bad fan fiction in a way. And, you know, there's nothing worse than bad fan fiction, you know, especially when you're seeing it on the big screen. But it wasn't all negative. There was some really good parts, as I mentioned, you know. So I'm not sitting here and saying it was an absolutely terrible film. I'm going to say it was disappointing. And, you know, once again, it just failed to live up to the legacy, I think, of what came before it. But it's done now. That's it for the Skywalker saga. And it is no more. We'll you know, they're definitely teasing doing more stuff with, you know, I think that's the reason why they wanted Rey to call herself a Skywalker, is so that they could have her come back in the future. But realistically, the Skywalker saga about that family is done. But you can still have her call herself a Skywalker going forward, and you can still do films about her, maybe in 10 years' time or whatnot. We'll see what happens. But anyway, that's my review. It's very late. I'm very tired. I'm going to go try and sleep a bit before I get up for work in a couple of hours. Let me know, please, what you thought of the film in the comments. Again, please be respectful. Whether you liked it or hated it, please treat each other with respect and kindness. Stick around. Subscribe. I'm reacting to The Mandalorian. I play D&D on the weekends. I live stream it, so go and check out my Twitch channel if you want to go see that. Well, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to reading some of your opinions in the comments.